You are listening to the Gritty Podcast, where we talk about all things gritty. Welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call. I've got Brad Hunt here beside me, and today's podcast is with Tim Lesser from Leupold Optics. I hooked up with Tim at the Western Hunt Expo in February, and he and I talked about Leupold, their new range-finding binocular, a couple other products that they have. We got into some details on Leupold. Tim's an awesome guy. I went to Kodiak with him. He's been a good friend of mine for years, and he's a wealth of knowledge. So we sit down, we just talk about what's new at Leupold, what's going on, and their new products, some of their new products, and it's a great discussion. You don't want to miss it. Before we get into the podcast, we have two giant giveaways going on right now. One is with Peaks Equipment, and the package includes a Peaks Solitude teepee, the new teepee that came out. It's incredible.
Yes.
I have a lot of footage of this teepee that I haven't published yet. I've been testing this teepee for a couple of years. It's been going back and forth between production and testing and back to production again. And what Peaks came out with in the end is an exceptional product.
Yeah.
So you get the teepee, you can get the trekking poles, the elite trekking poles. You can get a pair of Peaks gaiters. You get the headlamp from Peaks.
Yep.
In addition to that, there's more products in the
Yes, we got
giveaway.
an Initial Ascent backpack. You got a Stealthy Hunter package, which includes their glassing pad, the rifle cover, and a medical kit, as well as some kit sacks. You got a Dark Energy Poseidon, which we use a ton of, the Sheep Feed Orthotics, an all-in digiscoping setup, $500 to the Go Hunt Gear Shop, and a lifetime membership to the Insider, and then a $250 gift card to Mountain Ops.
Great giveaway, big package. We have to thank all of our partners who help us do these giveaways. So right now, if you want to be entered to win that package, just head over to Peaks and buy the new t-shirt called Some Men Can, Some Men Can't. All you got to do is go to peaksequipment.com/gritty, or just go to Peaks and shop t-shirts, and you will find the shirt there. And there's a cool backstory that goes with the shirt. It's just a motivational shirt from a hunt we did years ago, and it's a great story. And it's a great motivational shirt.
Yep.
Some men can and some men can't. That's the motto. Go check it out. When you buy the shirt, you'll be entered to win. We're going to announce that winner around April
10th, 11th, 12th, somewhere in there. So
look for the winner then. You got a couple of weeks. And don't forget to use the code GRITTY when you're over at Peaks, because you get a discount site-wide when you do that. All right, so the next thing is we also have a giveaway with Initial Ascent packs. I have the new 8K backpack right here. I just did a podcast with Dennis and Joe, the owners of Initial Ascent. We published that on Sunday, I believe.
Yep.
So if you check this out, you go and listen to that podcast if you're interested in a new backpack at all. I can't say enough about what Initial Ascent has come out with. It's my favorite pack, and I've used a lot. Ryan Lampers is sold. He is pretty much in agreement with me at this point.
Yeah.
He's a slow conversion.
Well, and it's funny because what most people don't realize is Ryan Lampers turned you on to Initial Ascent.
Ryan introduced me to Initial Ascent, and he's had the frame for years, but now they've come out with a bag that he's pretty stoked about, and we both had a hand in sort of the design, but the 8K is my favorite. It's got this what do you call it? Like a beaver tail set up here. The way the pack integrates with the frame is sweet. The access, that beaver tail is so important to us users. And the top lid, the frame and suspension. It's just a great setup. But if you're interested in it, go check out that podcast. It's number
776.
Okay, 776. Thank you, Brad. Check it out. And the guys at Initial Ascent are awesome.
Yeah.
And we have a huge package, prize package for everyone that shops over there and buys a pack between now and April 9th at midnight. So two weeks. Again, it's about 2 weeks. And in that, you can get an Initial Ascent backpack.
Yep.
You get a Leupold spotter.
Yep. Tripod.
All
in digiscope. And then you got the Go
Hunt gift card for $500. You have the Insider lifetime membership.
Yep.
Iron Mountain skull hanger. You got a goat knife. You got all in. You got the Graxaw game bags.
Yep.
Great package. And when you shop over there and you buy the pack, actually, it's every $25 you spend over there.
Every $25.
So you can get a skull hanger. You can get a water bottle holder. You can just kind of shop over there and see a t-shirt. Anything will get you entered to win. It's $25 spent over at Initial Ascent, and that package, you're in the running for the package.
Yep.
And like I said, I can't say enough about the quality of the bag, the suspension system, the design of it. It's incredible. It really is. There's some new things about it. Brad and I need to break open the pack and really showcase it on an upcoming podcast, this newer backpack. And we all do a lot of heavy packs and for many multi-day hunts. And this bag is huge. But just the right kind of huge. It's good huge. So check that out. Every $1 you spend, every $25 you spend gets you entered to win the package over at Initial Ascent. So 2 big giveaways going on. We appreciate any support you can give us. If you can't get in on the giveaways, we just like when you leave a comment, like and subscribe to the channel. That's huge for us. We can't thank you enough. We're able to do this because of you. So thank you. And without further ado, let's get into this show. Check out this podcast with Tim Lesser. Hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. Stay gritty. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Call, and today I am joined by Tim Lesser from Leupold Optics, good friend. We've known each other for quite a long time.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I can't put a number of years on it. I was trying to go back, but
I think
lots.
I think 2017.
17 or 18 is what I was thinking, so somewhere in there.
Somewhere there. I think your wife was 2017, and then I got to know you later.
Okay.
As like the secondary person in that.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, she's
kind of a popular all-star type person.
Yeah. Yeah, she's the one that meets and knows everybody, and then
you get drug
eventually through there, like, I've seen you on social.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Would you characterize yourself as extremely outgoing?
Of course, yes, on this. That's my goal most of the time is to go out and meet as many people as I can.
Well, I have fond memories of Kodiak Island and shooting foxes and Sitka blacktail.
That was a fun trip.
Yeah,
that was trial by fire. We got to spend some time in a tent in a tsunami.
Yeah, we had to outrun a tsunami.
Yeah.
I mean, that bonds people for life.
It does.
For life. But we were down there with Cole Kramer, and that was such a fun trip. One of my favorites of all time. Pretty amazing experience.
It was the whole thing.
Have you been back?
I have been back. It was a slightly different experience. I think the warmest that we got to was about 22 degrees.
Really?
And some of it was negative, and so
was it Sitka blacktail again?
It was snowy, windy, and cold, like only Kodiak can get. Right, because it's not normally marine air that's 0 and 40-mile-an-hour winds.
No.
So some of those days were 15 below and 30-mile-an-hour winds, 40-mile-an-hour winds.
What month was it?
December. It was very close to when we went, but it was freakishly
just a little
cold.
bit more.
Yeah.
I went there again with Cole and hunted goats. Mountain goats. I drew the tag.
Yep.
And so I got to hunt with Cole, and that was good. That was great. But I was there in August. It was nice and sunny and warm and
more green, less white.
It was all green with white dots everywhere.
White dots.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I had never seen so many mountain goats in my life. I should have brought a bow. We only had like a 4-day window to do the hunt because Cole was backed up on both ends. So it was a real short hunt, and I was like, I don't know if I want to bring a bow for that. You only get so many goat tags in your life.
Yep.
But then when I got there and I saw how many goats there were, I mean, it was kind of silly hunting with a rifle.
Did you feel like running back to the bottom of the mountain and getting a bow?
Yeah, I kind of felt like, which one do you want? And you just shoot, because there's so many options. It didn't feel like, because my other prior experience was hunting with a bow for mountain goat, and I did get one. But we saw like 6 goats total in 10 days, and pulling it off felt like a miracle. But we did it, and so I was like, man, goat hunting's tough, and doing it with a bow is a challenge. I count myself very blessed to have done it with a bow. And then I went to Kodiak, and I'm like, okay, these two things are not the same. Which of these things looks different? I never saw so many big goats, just everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would have had the same impression that you did.
Yeah.
That this is going to be tough and work hard. And
no, you almost needed a bow. It's one of those hunts where you just needed the bow to make it more of a hunt, because it's just like we could have tagged out every hour.
Wow.
On big goats.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, I mean, there were just Cole's like, well, this one, let's find one a half inch bigger because they're all big, like at some point it was kind of silly. And they're non-native, they're invasive. I guess you could call it invasive, but they're not they're not native to the island. So they're introduced and they're not typical there. So it was a different kind of hunt.
Different deal. Yeah.
Yep. So
it's fun when it goes that way. There's, lots of opportunity. It's a good thing.
And so over the years, as I've been hunting, and I've been waiting for Leupold to come out with a range-finding binocular.
You're not the only one.
And I had a prototype once that I really loved that I thought was going to come out with years ago.
Yep.
And I dropped it off a cliff.
I'm not shocked.
And I turned it into
I'm not shocked.
I turned it into a baby rattler. Like it would like click, 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 click. And it was Randy Newberg's. And so he was not happy. He's like, Brian, that's the only prototype. It's the only prototype. And I'm like, well, I've tested it and it can't take a 30-foot drop off a ledge in Arizona. It can't do it.
It doesn't
work.
We do drop tests, but generally not to that extent.
It was a long way down, Tim. It was bad. And I just leaned over and it just fell out of the Bino harness. And I was like, oh, crap. These aren't even mine. And it's funny is a day later, I borrowed Brinker's 15s.
Yep.
And did the same thing.
Huh.
Bashed in the glass.
If those were Brinkers, was there a small piece of you that meant to do that?
Well, Brinker left them there and went home.
Okay.
Because he leaves things everywhere.
He does.
He's
Hansel and Gretel trail.
So he accidentally left his equipment there, and I'm like, well, since he left it here, I'm going to use it because he has 15s, and I'm trying to hunt coos, and I only have 12s. Let's do this.
Yep.
And then I, dropped them off another ledge, and broke the glass. They just put a big gash in it. So then we both called Riza, and we're like, Riza, can you send us some more of these? She's like, seriously, Brinker? And he's like, this time it wasn't me.
That might have been a tough sell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, tell me about it, because I know you guys have some prototypes over there, or what's the deal with what's going on at Leupold right now? What is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, what are the products you got in the pipeline that you're...
Yeah, well, that's one of them.
Okay.
So we are launching a new, that one's a 10 by 42,
Yep.
and it's a laser range finding binocular. So a couple of different pieces on that. So the ranging button, which side does it go on? That can be a kind of a common question. So you've got right-handers and left-handers, and if you're using a bow, you've got your bow in one hand and you need
Yep.
So, we've put a button on both sides for that. It's a 2,900 or 2,600 yard
Look at you.
rangefinder. And so
Okay.
we're thinking about you. We
that.
send stuff out, and whether it gets dropped off a cliff or not, we learn things about ergonomics and where do people want certain control features and stuff
Yep.
like that. So, yeah, well, that's new. That'll be coming out in the next month or so.
2,600 yards.
Yes. Yeah, that's so. Now, to be in full transparency,
Mhm.
we like to be very clear about what the rangefinders will and will not do. So you'll see these huge numbers. It'll range X many kilometers or X many thousands of yards. We will put a spec right in there that says it'll go this far on reflective targets.
I gotcha.
And just for total transparency, reflective targets are things like highway signs.
Yeah.
That are made to reflect all the light off your headlights, and so you can range really well off
Really
of those.
well, yeah.
But in the real world, there's not many mountain goats walking around with a highway sign or a mirror taped to them. So we will spec reflective targets and then trees and then like a deer hide, because a grayish mule deer type hide is a fairly tough thing to range. And so we walk through and spec to all of those. And so even in the most difficult situations, you're still talking 1,100, 1,200 yards. So for hunting purposes, this will get you everywhere you need to go. But
the one thing that I found impressive and that I value greatly in the Leupold rangefinder is its ability to range in the snow, the wind. It's not perfect. Like no rangefinder can do that. How is it that you guys do that? How do you get it to do that? Because back in the day, they were all useless.
They were, if there was any visible obstruction.
Yeah.
It was a fog, rain, snow. And so the way that you can get through that, we have an electronics engineering team that, in terms of rangefinders, all they do is focus on, without going too nerdy, and you know me, so stop me if I get too far down the nerd rabbit hole. It's the signal to noise ratio, and the way I break that down is if you and I had a laser pointer, like you'd run your dog around the house with, or a pointer for a presentation. If you take that out and use it at night, you can see it all the way across. You could see it hundreds and hundreds of yards away on trees.
Yeah.
You do the same thing in the day and you can only see it 15, 20 yards away.
Yeah.
That's because the other light is causing basically glare. It's noise in what our eye is seeing.
Okay.
So what we do is we go through with that engineering team and they spend their time trying to figure out how exactly do we maximize the return of that signal when it comes back through software. So when it comes back, how do I recognize what was the laser itself and what is the sun that's in front of me or other reflective targets? Because there's light everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's looking for light. So we do it with kind of a digital signal processing platform, and that's on our engines that go inside of those rangefinders. And so they're looking for very specific things to know this was the beam that's bouncing off the target and coming back, because that's how we range, just like we see the dot because the light bounced off and came back to our eye.
Yep.
A rangefinder is sending hundreds of little bursts of light every second, and it's looking to time those when they come back. And that sensor in the software
tells it how distant,
how far away is it. And so we spend a lot of time simulating different types of atmospheric conditions. Is the sun behind you? Is it off to your left, off to your right? Is it in front of you? What does that do to the sensor that's seeing light come in? How does it know how far away it was? And really, we take it one step farther than that, which is, especially for archery, where 5 or 6 yards is the difference, hopefully, between a hit and a miss, but a lot of times between a hit and a wounding. You know, if you start getting out very far and you're off by 6, 7 yards, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
And if you take a lot of rangefinders and range a light target and a dark target, you'll get a 6 or 7 yard difference, even though they're the same distance from you. So we take that a whole another step farther and say, okay, when that beam hits whatever we're ranging, how do we know exactly how far it is regardless of color? And that seems like a minor thing, but it's really hard to get that done, and they've perfected that. So we blend all that into all of our rangefinders.
See, I was on a hunt this year. I was out there with Mark Livesey, and we were in a blizzard in late season for late season mule deer, and I mean it was coming down hard. And, you know, I'm using my rangefinder, and it would take a little bit, you know, for it to punch through. Yep. And then there was ebbs and flows in with the snowfall, and it would kind of lay down for a minute, and then it'd pick back up again.
Yep.
And I shot this buck, and it went 327 yards. I know because I ranged it, but I didn't know if it was really giving me the true range, right? Because I'm like, man, the snow, maybe. But maybe not. There's a lot of interference. Maybe it's hitting something like a lot closer to me than I think. Maybe it's 400 yards or, you know, I wasn't sure. And so I kind of was like, I'm testing it. If it can range in this, it's impressive.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm ranging. I keep getting that. Every now and then it doesn't come back, but then it gives me a range. It gives me a range. And I'm like, and then thankfully, and I already shot the buck.
Okay.
And then he bedded down. He laid down. And I'm like, okay. Well, and I range, and then the about 15 minutes later, snow stopped, and I ranged, and it was 327, and just like it was, and I was like, man, because I could have shot it while it was still standing. I started to question myself, like, I already had a bullet in it, and it shocked me, and I shot it with a 300 Win Mag, and I replayed the video, and it was a double lung hit, and I hit it, jumped in the air. And it bolted, and it chased a doe. It didn't want that doe to get away, you know, so you know how they are. And it's rutting.
Yep, single focus.
Up.
Yeah.
And he ran after that doe despite he had a hole in himself. He's like, I don't care. And he covered some ground fast because she was lights out, taken off like a bullet. So he's on her. So they can cover ground in 5 seconds, 10 seconds, they can go. So a lot of that was got out pretty quick. That distance he made, like 150 yards, was like that. But then he stopped and he was like, whoa. Then he stood there and he went, whoa, 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 whoa. And I thought, oh, he's tipping over. And then he regained it and he stood there. And then he walked another 150 yards, just like nothing was wrong. Like, not like nothing was wrong, but just like he just walked. And I'm like, then you start to question, like, I saw him almost tip over.
Yeah, what's going on?
And now he's recruiting his strength. It's the nightmare situation because you're like, wait a minute, you've seen deer go down, get up, and then walk off, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, you're supposed to be dead now, and you're not, and you start to panic a little bit.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I could have put one more shot down range, but I didn't know if I had the right range or not.
Yep.
And I didn't want to just fling one out, even though I already had a bullet in it, I didn't want to push him. Even though, it was snow, I was going to be able to find him. I knew it. Anyway, long story short, it ranged it correctly in that snow. And then we got over there and got the buck and
got him.
Yeah, he was down.
Yeah, and that's that situation that's testament to that processing and the engineering time that goes into it. Because you and I just think, well, if I can see it, why can't it range it? But it's getting a distance off every single snowflake between you and that deer, and that's where you can kind of crash other rangefinders. They get that and they're like, I just got 1,000 different ranges all at once.
I've been on hunts with pretty much all the other brands. And I would say the Leupold is, in terms of its ability to get through that stuff, it's top tier.
Yeah.
Top tier, which is critical for all the things that we do. We hunt in pretty rugged country.
And you don't get a lot of second chances, and there's a lot of thought, effort, planning, points, everything went into that. So kind of our motto is the gear has to work the first time, every time.
One of the things that's, you got the rangefinder punching through. I have wanted a rangefinding bino for a while, because there's a difference in ranging with the bino and ranging with the monocular.
There is.
Tell me about that. I have my opinion. What's yours?
There's a couple things. One is that we're really used to looking through a binocular already, and so you're using both eyes. You're relaxed. You know how to look through it. The ergonomics. We've gotten used to, so for rifle hunters, you get used to a rifle and it points. You can look at something, pick up your gun, never take your eye off the target, and when you look in your scope, they're on the crosshair.
Yep.
Well, we glass enough with binoculars that we're used to pointing it right at our target and seeing visually.
You see it on the mountain, you pull up the bino, and it's just there.
And it's there.
Because muscle memory, you've used it so many times. You get a new monocular or something like a rangefinder, and you're like, boom, you bring it up, and you're like, where the hell is it? And it's different.
And you're looking around, and it's just, one piece of kit that's smaller, and you've got it up on your eye, and you're trying to look through it. And as a general statement, a lot of the handheld rangefinders are a different magnification, right? So they'll be 6 power, 7 power. And so you're like, okay, I know what it looks like with my naked eye. I know what all the things around it look like.
I know what it looks like with 12 power because I've been staring at it through my binos.
And now you're right in between. And so you're like, is that the same bush? Is that the same rock? And so having it match up to what you're used to seeing every day, and now it's just a matter of, oh, that's what that is. I press a button and get a range. It's just a natural progression, right? And so it's a lot easier to use in many cases.
Yeah, my 2 cents is that I hunted Arizona for coos deer. And at the time when I used Randy's, I had used rangefinding binos before. I just thought they were a nifty gadget, but why would I bring that when I could just bring the little mini one that I always carry? It's lightweight. It was more expensive to get the rangefinder version versus the other, and I already had a rangefinder, so I'm just thinking to myself, what's the point? Oh, it saves a step, but then I don't have this little jig I can just grab real easily. I have to use, this. Well, then reality struck because a coos deer bounces out. He's standing there. He's 70 yards away, and I'm pulling up the handheld rangefinder, the little guy, and I'm like trying to range, and I'm like, am I hitting him or am I hitting the bush? Am I hitting him or am I hitting something behind? Am I ranging over his back or him? And coos deer are little gray ghosts, and they're not easy to see as it is. And then you got some brush or different things in the. And my biggest question in their small targets is the dot on the animal,
right?
And you're trying to see it in the glaring sun through that. Well, when I pulled up the bino,
you knew right away.
I knew exactly. I could see the dot floating on the shoulder of the deer, and I don't have to question the range that I'm getting back.
Yeah.
Is it ranging the thing I think it's ranging? That question died.
Yeah.
am I hitting the grass in front of it? Like, because it's magnified so much that I know where the dot's at.
Yeah.
And it was way faster to acquire range, shockingly faster to acquire range with the Bino. The other thing is I would walk around my bow in my left hand, and I just pull those binos up, looking at a few yards as I'm still hunting. And I know the buck is somewhere, and then I'm like, oh, there's the deer. Well, I have to put that away, reach down, grab my rangefinder, and range it. But when I had Randy's binos and I had a Coatimundi right there, I'm like, oh, there it is. Range it at that moment, put it away. It saved me that 2-step process with a bow in hand.
And that's extra movement to be detected and time and everything. Yeah.
And if I remember right, I think I had to reach over and kind of hit the button. Was it? Which side was it on? Was it the right hand side or the left?
That one.
I got big hands, so it didn't matter.
Been on the left on the one that you had.
I got the mitts.
Sorry, on the right. Yeah, so you can hold it in your right hand and range with the one that you would have had then.
Okay. Yeah. I did use it a ton, and I was like, this is sweet. And then that was a while ago, because then it was a prototype, but then I never saw one materialize.
Right.
What was it? What were you guys just trying to perfect it? What was the deal there? Like,
yeah, it's because
it was sweet.
It was, and
I'm like, I do remember talking to you back then, and one of the things you said was, look, it's got to perform on the it performed, it gave you accurate ranges, it worked really well, all that kind of stuff, but it also has to be able to take a beating,
right,
and all do it together at the same time, and also not weigh 55 pounds.
Yep,
that helps.
And so that's the piece on the product side that can be. It's tough for me to start showing things at the beginning, because people see it and say, "Hey, this is perfect. Let's roll." I love it, or just move the button over here, or make the button easier to push or more difficult. We get some of that feedback. But going through and making sure that every unit that comes off the assembly line, so out of production, is going to perform exactly the same.
Yeah,
that's more difficult than it seems at first. So really, we're tinkering with hand built units. So the ones that you have are put together on an engineer's desk, glued together, and that feels like all best processes, right? So I used the right amount of Loctite. Right. But they applied it by hand. It wasn't through a measured, metered applicator. It wasn't assembled perfectly in a clean room environment like production stuff will be. And so you find things like, if it takes this fall, a lens might fall out of a lens holder, and now it rattles, which is what you ran into.
Yep.
And so we're really big on making sure that before we bring it to market, everything is right. The optics are right, the ranging is right, the buttons, the ergonomics, or at least as right as that form factor will allow. There's always some things, there's a give and a take in any product, but we needed that extra time to make sure that the reputation and the expectations that people have, which is, I'll buy this once and I will use it forever and it will never let me down. We had to make sure that it was going to do that. And it takes time to go through all the freeze tests and drop tests and everything, because I kind of phrase it like we break it and then fix it and then break something else and then fix it. And so you just keep breaking it until you can't break a certain part.
I got to tell you, as I've been part of companies bringing things to market, it's scary, because you think you tested it. You think the worst nightmare is you sell, 1,000 units of something and they're all faulty.
Absolutely.
Like they all have some kind of major problem, and you're like, oh crap. And now, it's a nightmare. So that's the big scary fear is when I think anybody's bringing in a product. That's why, especially when you got a reputation like Leupold for durability and reliability and all that, it's got to meet that test. It's got to deliver. So you got the range-finding Bino. When does it come out?
So we've got some here. They're the initial ones we're showing here in Salt Lake.
We're at the Western Hunt Expo right now.
Okay. And they'll be shipping in probably end of March. So we'll start getting those out end of March, early April. They'll start hitting retail locations and become available. Like any new product, there's a ramp up that goes with that. So we want to take extra time on the beginning. We're following all of our usual processes, which is kind of a crawl, walk, run. We know that it's proven itself. We know that that all the processes will work, and that it's going to come out right. But we don't want to go into full throttle right away. So there'll be a little bit of a ramp up, and then by mid-year this year, we'll be in full production, top quantities, all that coming out. So by fall they'll be obtainable and out there and available.
Sweet. What's the glass like?
So they're in the BX4 range. Okay. So it's called the BX4 range HD.
Yep.
And so if you've used something like one of our BX4 Pro Guide level of binoculars, this is the level of performance that you can expect out of these. With any rangefinder, you need an extra step that doesn't happen in a binocular, which is we want all the light to come through that binocular as possible, right? You want low light performance, clarity, resolution, all that, but we need to reflect that red back to your eye.
Yeah.
And so in order to do that effectively in a binocular, there's a lot of perfecting that needs to go on. And so honestly, the glass is a level higher than a BX4, just to make sure that if you're expecting BX4 performance, that this will meet or exceed that.
Gotcha.
And so it's in that level.
Yeah, you described that to me a few years ago, how that works with the rangefinder, that the glass is a little different, a little clearer. What's the downside to the glass? What's different about the glass? Like, you got the Pro, it's basically a little bit clearer. Why not use that glass on everything?
So by the time you're working for edge clarity, it kind of depends on use case. So without going too far down the rabbit hole, some users will tend to be more mobile. They're walking around, they'll see something that catches their eye, and they want to pick up a binocular, look through it, and say, what is that thing?
Yeah.
Others will sit in glass for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours looking for an antler tip or a throat patch or something. And so we're trying to walk a happy medium, because in order to get the level of binocular performance that you would like to see with a rangefinder inside of it, we already need to go a level higher on the optical performance, because we literally need to cut out some of the red.
That's crazy.
Otherwise, it won't bounce. You won't see the display reflected back to you.
Yeah.
So we're working harder to get that done, and that's why you'll see range-finding binoculars across the board cost more than their non-ranging counterparts. It's not just the electronics; it's because you need to go up a notch on the glass to counteract some of the downsides of trying to reflect. We don't want to reflect anything on a binocular other than glare.
Yeah.
Normally, but now we need to reflect the display backwards back.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right, and then what's your price point on that?
So those are $1,600, so $1,599. Okay. Yeah,
right on, man. And I'm excited.
They're going to perform like $3,000 range-finding binoculars. So great optical performance. They're always going to weigh slightly more because you've got an electronics board and a battery in there. But lightweight, compact, everything you'd expect from a BX4 Pro Guide, but 2,600 yard rangefinder.
How similar are they to the prototypes you guys were messing with years ago?
Very similar in some areas and very different in others. Okay. So the one that you had, we used a wire bonding technique for the display. And so picture needing to solder like little pins everywhere on that to light the display up, versus a production display that you go in and you spend a considerable amount of capital making this a high production type of a display.
Okay.
And so what we don't want to do is go out and spend all the money on tooling and fixturing and everything for a display to find out, hey, when you drop this, a lens pops out and we need to put more reinforcement around this or that. Now we need to buy another display. And so there's all this, non-recurring engineering expenses, NRE, that goes into it.
Yeah.
That eventually that project is going to absorb. So the unit cost would go up.
Yeah.
So we'd rather hand build at the beginning, make sure everything looks right, and then go into production tooling. So things like the display changed a little bit. And that technology revs, every year. And so you think about cars right now, hard to get a car because of the chip shortage, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what we're facing here is when someone in the optics industry wants to go get their own unique board, display, get all that laid out, get all the componentry put on it.
Yeah.
But you're behind Tesla and General Motors in line. You have to be pretty loud to even get their attention, right? And so that's part of what you're feeling there is once we knew it was ruggedized and ready to go, you're waiting on chip manufacturers and you're not as important to them as Intel, for example.
That's wild. I was asking too because I recall being with some pretty proficient hunters and comparing the various brands and their performance, and so your competitors, and the Leupolds were the ones back then, the prototypes they were ahead of the competition in so many levels and so many points along the way. And yet, so I was really excited way back when for them to come out. So I'm excited now, and I'm just thinking it's a kind of a must-have for most of us, and you get rid of that rangefinder issue as well. You don't need one when you have it in your binos that.
When it's there and you're already holding it, away you go. Yeah.
So what's the programmability of it? Can you do some of that stuff like you do with ballistics?
We can. So this version here is going to be the same true ballistic range with wind that you've seen before. So this one is more of it's an easier interface. So you would pick a ballistics group and it will do everything else for you. So if you want yardage, it will give you the yardage ballistically. So it's not just up angle and down angle, but it's looking at the bullet path over that angle and giving you a ballistically matched distance, which is different than just angle. But it would also tell you number of clicks to go up and down, whether it's MOA or mil, if you want to go that route.
Yeah.
So it will tell you those things. As far as inputting your exact specific ballistics, that's not on this unit yet, and it's again related to when you put in your order for parts. We sometimes get limited by what you can get.
Yeah.
So, obviously we'll continue to keep going, but this will do everything that a hunter needs. Now, if someone was trying to shoot, over a mile where an extra degree or two on the temperature starts to make a hit or a miss.
Right.
But if you're looking 800 yards and under, this is the fastest, easiest solution, and it will give you all the ballistics that you need.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I have never shot anything, I think, over 450.
Animal wise?
Yeah. No animals over 450.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Up to this point. Which is a poke. I mean, that's fine. Like as traditionally being a bow hunter for so many years,
right?
And then doing a lot since I hunted with lampers, I've switched up to a lot more rifle hunting than I used to do, and it's still rewarding because we're going to some awesome places and doing some adventurous stuff. I always say like the adventure isn't just always in the weapon. Like I said about Kodiak, you really needed a bow to make that fun. But when I go to some places with Ryan, I don't need the bow to make it any harder. Like it's already difficult. A 10-day grind in negative 10 degrees, just getting through and finding a big buck in that. And we often joke, in a 10-day window, we only saw 2 bucks the whole time that were shooters. And those are the 2 bucks we took home.
That you end up bringing
home.
And
then that was it. And so it wasn't like we were like, it's hard. It's hard enough.
Yeah, I mean, without diving into personal preferences on ethics and what, because that I think is individualized to each person, their capability, the conditions, the animal, all those things. But generally, for me, 800 is about double what I would ever want to do.
Yeah,
because I like the experience of getting in close and doing some of those things, and there's a lot can happen while the bullet's in the air over farther than 800 yards, and so
absolutely,
this way. There's pros and cons to doing it this way, but we really targeted hunting environments where you need an answer right now that is going to get you within a quarter minute of where you need to be, which is more accurate than I can be, out of a field position anyway.
Yeah.
So this was done intentionally to make it super fast, super easy, and well within the accuracy of what a general field position would allow you to do.
That's sweet. So, what else you got?
So there's a couple of other things. One is another handheld rangefinder, and so we've got an RX 1500 coming out. And so for archers, we've added another piece in there, which is flight path technology. So you may have seen
RX4, the 5, the full draw 5,
right?
So
this has a similar technology. So you essentially get a really good idea of whether you're obstruction free on your arrow path. It'll show you right on the display. Hey, if this window is open, your arrow will sneak through. You don't have to worry about it. So now you have a visual reference.
That's pretty cool for hunting in tight country, thick country.
It is.
The guys at Wild Arrow were freaking out. Like they love that thing. Cody down there was Cody Jones. He was like kind of explaining how he used that and it came in clutch.
It can, like Western Oregon, as you know, is almost, I think, considered rainforest, and it may as well, right? Because it's just all the branches are covered in moss, and you just
temperate rainforest.
It is thick and dark and all those things, and so having a little piece of aid that can just tell you you're good to go or no, you need to either wait or reposition or whatever. So that helps, and we're cascading that down into that RX 1500. So that's kind of a lot of value packed into that rangefinder there.
Yeah,
so it's a handheld monocular like we were talking about before.
Okay,
and then on the shooting side, we've got a Mark V, which is it's a rifle scope, magnified rifle scope, and there's a family that exists already. It's one of our most popular lines of rifle scopes. It's taken competitive shooting by storm. A lot of government contracts, military, law enforcement on that line. And one of the things that was missing was a lower power. So this is a 2-10. And on 2 power, you can see the end of your barrel. So lots of field of view. Up on 10 power, crystal clear optics. And so that's just a kind of an addition to a family, but it fits a really critical need in terms of magnification. So yeah, we're really excited about that, and just launching that. We launched it about 2 weeks ago.
Another thing that people don't know about, I talk about it a lot, but I feel like a lot of people don't know, the Leupold tripods are pretty cool.
The teams worked really hard on those, and so there's kind of a three different models there depending on the use case. And so there's an Alpine, which I look at that as kind of your ultra lightweight backpacker model, right? So they're all carbon fiber, designed to be very sturdy, very lightweight. And then so that Alpine is going to be not quite as tall. So for those of us that are going to sit down in glass, it works great. Even in steep terrain, there's enough length.
How do you like the head for glassing?
It works great for me. And so it depends if you're trying to film or if you're trying to glass off of them. Are you using a 15 or are you using a spotter? I love it because of the dual controls, especially as you get up into the
Does it have resistance then?
It does.
If some fluidity to it?
Yeah, it's more of a tension system, just because of some of the freezing issues we've seen with fluid heads when you get into super cold environments. You kind of went from a fully functional tripod head to a zero function tripod head. Because
I have a 8-pound camera, or something, like I always replace the heads with a big heavy duty like fluid head. So I actually haven't used the heads that come with it because they just can't handle that.
Right.
But I've wondered, like, maybe they would work great for just glassing with my binos or with my I always throw it on the head I have, but because it's so lightweight.
They're set up and they work really well. So
it's kind of a ball joint type head.
Yeah, and there's a couple different tensioners on there, so that it's easy.
I should mess around with it.
Do I want to pan just left and right? Do I want to be able to go any which direction? You can adjust the tension so that it's easy enough to move, but as soon as you let go, it stays where it was. There's a lot of thought went into the ergonomics of that, but primarily geared at people that are going to have a binocular or a spotting scope on there. Yeah. Maybe a shooting stick or something that goes on it, but big, heavy cameras have different needs.
Yeah.
And so our goal is to get you the lightest weight, most functional for, glass optics, not digital with batteries and things. Yeah.
That's your head right there.
It is. Yep.
That Leupold fluid head. You guys still sell that one too?
That one, I'm looking at it. It's very similar to the one you've got there. There have been some slight adjustments with how we get the ARCA rail
on there
going into it, and just to make some of those things better and easier every day. We always learn things, but for all intents and purposes, very similar. And then when you get up to the Pro Guide and the Mark V, which the Mark V is, I can do pull-ups under it. It's tall enough to be above me, and I can hang from it and do pull-ups. And that's for primarily as a shooting platform. Some people even use it as a shelter, because they're already carrying it.
Well, you do have the shooting like clamp.
Right.
You can throw on there, which I've used a couple of times, throw it right on there and get that gun locked in.
Right. Like a vice. Like a vice that goes up on the top.
It's pretty handy.
It's
pretty handy for certain hunts.
Yeah.
I need to practice with that more, especially because I do have a grizzly hunt this year.
Oh, right on.
April.
Okay.
And my biggest struggle was, it's not easy to get set up on those grizzlies, and they don't. You see them, and then they're gone.
They're gone, moving,
and you ain't laying down, getting prone like it's Alaska. It's so hard, and so I needed to figure out another method that's quick and efficient, but reliable.
Right.
So I'm hoping.
So those clamps, my kids have. Oh, I'm trying to think. They've shot the majority of their animals off of those.
Have they?
Because even if you get the buck fever thing and the jitters, it holds and stabilizes the rifle well enough that you can just look through the scope and touch the trigger. You don't even need to. If you're shaking, which they tended to be on the the firsts, right?
Yep.
Then it's stable enough that you can just run the trigger. You get the crosshairs where you want. Run the trigger. You need to be behind the gun to see through it, obviously.
Yeah.
But those started, that idea started with Overwatch and security. And so you look at stadiums and let's say Super Bowl, there's Overwatch for the Super Bowl. And there's not always places that you can lay down or sit down. But how do you stay as tall as possible to clear obstructions and have the stability of going prone? And that's kind of what those bring for you, is that, especially in uneven terrain,
What do you do for a backrest? Do you bother with that, or is it enough resistance that you can just kind of set it up in there?
There's enough resistance that now, if you have a big heavy rifle and you clamp it off of the axis, off of the fulcrum of the rifle, so at the balance point. But if you clamp down on the balance point, as a general statement, you don't need a backrest. You can just loosen the tension, track to where you want it, lock it down, and it will stay exactly, like you can just go completely hands-free, and crosshairs are
and just touch it off.
Yeah, so generally the wobble is induced by us, whether it be the wind blowing us around behind it, or just our natural body sway, or any of those things. So you can do another leg back there if you want to prop something under it. For me personally, what I try to do is sit down as low as I can, or if I'm standing, I try to get my elbow up against a tree, or in some cases I've done weird things like hang a sling around something and I can lay my elbow in it. But generally you don't necessarily need that.
Yeah. This Wiser Precision right here.
Yep.
I think it's those guys. They do the quick. So on our trekking poles over at Peaks, they have the little lock and it turns into a cross member, and I put the butt of the rifle in that.
Yeah,
in the back,
almost like attaching the handles on your trek poles as a rear bag. Yeah.
But the other thing
works really well.
What we've done is I sling the rifle butt in the handle, and then I can quickly raise the trekking pole, I'll fully extend it, and then I'll just raise the angle.
You start leaning it in
closer and closer because I can quickly get it raised to the right level, and it hangs in the sling there, and is real steady. So when I'm breathing heavy and I'm nervous, it's clamped in the front and resting in the back.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because that takes extra steps, and I'm not shooting that far. I never do. But if I put it at the fulcrum point like you're describing, I'll have to practice with that. I haven't put the time into it because 99% of my hunts, I don't need to do this. I want to try that. I'll have to test it out. But Leupold makes that little adapter, and so I threw it on the tripod, messed around with it a little bit, and Anthony used it for his kids, and it was money. Because the old one the first one I used was like Triclops or something.
Yes.
It was heavy. A lot of extra parts and stuff, and what you guys have is real simple.
Yeah, there's some that are, machined out of metal, and we've gone with good resin, poly, so it doesn't weigh much, but you have the same strength and rigidity and those things. But really that piece of, before you clamp it down, could you let go of the gun and it wouldn't tip off forward or backwards? Because most of us try to clamp it just in front of the mag well or something. Right. Well, if you've got a suppressor on there or a heavier barrel and a lighter stock, it's trying to go off forward. So you're already putting some stress into the system. And you just look at your rifle and mess with it a little bit. When you find it right at the balance point, and then
just set it there. And if you have a
wobble, will go
like
away.
With my fluid heads, you just pan right to the shot angle, lock it
and done.
Yeah, it's pretty deadly.
Yeah,
I'll have to try that. So when the rifle kicks and all that, it still stays on, like when you're dealing with kids. And all of that. With a big caliber bullet, with a big caliber rifle, you've shot way more than I have over the years.
Yeah, so my daughter has shot. She has a lightweight 308, and my 300 weighs about 6.5 pounds.
Okay,
so when it goes off.
Yeah,
and both kids have shot that rifle for their deer and been perfectly fine. Now the suppressor helps. There's a little bit of recoil mitigation from the suppressor, but
okay.
honestly, if you're in as long as you're in a good, comfortable shooting position, and then like we learned at Madras, make sure that you're squared up so that when the gun comes back, your body goes straight back instead of being turned sideways and bladed a little bit, which will try to shove the muzzle over because it kind of hits you at an angle and it bounces off of you.
Yeah.
A couple of those little techniques, and it'll come back and go forward and be right back where it was, even if they're shooting with one hand only around the pistol grip.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome to watch a 75-pound girl shoot a 6-pound 300.
Yeah.
She shot my 375 before, and it just sends her back on her heels, but she comes right back down and
I'll have to try that.
Back on target.
Get ready for that hunt. Okay, so yeah, folks, check out the tripods if you're interested in one. The price points are good.
They are. They're very competitive.
And and it's a solid tripod. Now, if you're not careful, the legs can come off in the heat of the moment.
Your binos can fall off of a cliff.
They can fall.
The legs can. You just never know.
Yeah, they the Leupold, where you twist tighten it.
Yeah,
I love the twist locks, and but they're so smooth, and I just probably didn't get it in there tight, like when I collapsed it. And then I drove. I let it just kind of rattle around on my backpack while I'm like riding a snowmobile in 10 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And it just vibrated out and dropped. And I drove back over my trail. But when you drop a vertical pole into 10 feet deep, kind of semi-wet snow,
it just punches down.
It's 10 feet underground. For all I know, it's like 6 feet down. Like, you're not going to find it. It's down.
Yeah, that's, in ATVs, whether it be, side-by-sides, snow machines, standard four-wheelers, that motor running, that vibration.
It's special kind of vibration.
It really tries to loosen screws.
Yeah.
And so that's part of our testing on scopes and other things. But anytime I'm going to get on one of those pieces of motorized equipment, like tripod legs, I snug them down.
Well, now every tripod leg, including the foot, because all of them have a little foot usually.
Yep.
I just make sure when it's in my pack that it's in
the pouch.
This pouch, the pocket at the bottom that holds the bottom. I didn't bother with it for years because when I'm on the run, I just strap it on to the side and go. Right. But then I started losing a few legs, and I'm like, okay, this is easily preventable simply by making sure the pocket
dropping it down in there.
But I've also done Loctite as well.
Yep.
And stuff like that over the years too.
That does work as well.
What do you got planned this year for hunts, Tim?
I'm getting close on sheep points in Wyoming, so I have to wait and see what that draw looks like. I don't expect to have luck there, but I'm going to put in for that.
Is that like a 15 points, 20 points, 11 points?
I'm at 19 now. 23 would be more preferable.
If you're at 19, that means you pretty much got in at the ground floor when they first started doing points.
Yeah, I blew it because
did you miss a year?
I missed 2 when I was, maybe 3 actually, when I was in college, and it's the stupidity of youth or naivety or whatever you want to call it. I always had pizza money.
Yeah.
But I couldn't find the $8 for a preference point when I was a resident. And now I'm perpetually 3 years behind the curve. So I'd like to go back and shake me a little bit, but I can't do that. And then I'm real high on elk points in Wyoming as well, but I'm going to wait for next year. So we'll do a lot of the local Oregon stuff. So we'll do the general blacktail and general Roosevelt season.
Yep.
But I'm kind of waiting to see how this sheep draw comes out, because what I don't want to do is book all of my available scouting time and then draw a tag. I want to do that right if I draw that tag. So
I think I have 17 points for 17 or 18 points for mountain goat in Utah.
Oh, great. Okay.
And same for elk.
Okay.
So I'm kind of ready to. Could draw a lot of hunts right now with what I've got. I think every year I'm in the running for the best goat unit in the state. The toughest. I think there's like 9 of us. It just depends how many of us apply to the same hunt at the same time.
At the same time. Yep.
But I'm right there with all those guys for points. So just a matter of time. And, when there's only 2 tags, 6 of us apply for it. And then the next year there's just that much less.
There's that many fewer. Yep.
I'm there. I'll get another goat tag before I die. One thing I do want to do is, I've killed 2 goats.
Yep.
I'm going to try to get the archery tag for it. But in some ways, I would love to give that tag to someone else, but I don't think you can do that in the state of Utah.
I don't know enough to say. It would be nice for certain things, but I could also see it being misused. So my guess is potentially not.
What is your favorite rifle that you're running right now? One of your favorites, and what's the scope setup?
Yeah, so I'm shooting a real lightweight 300 Win Mag, and so that was the folks at Proof helped me out on that, and we built it from the ground up to all the specs that I wanted. And once I got a hold of that, I've kind of gone everywhere with that one. And so I put a 3-18 on that.
What's the barrel length?
I have it set at 20.
Okay.
And for the purists out there, they'll say, well, okay, if you have it set down to 20, why not just shoot a 30-06? You don't have enough barrel length there. I didn't really see. I saw about a 40 feet per second, 35 foot per second drop. But what that allows me to do is keep a suppressor on the end of it.
Yeah.
I tend to hunt muzzle down. So if I'm going to sling one, if it's not lashed on my pack and it's over my shoulder, with a suppressor, they like to go muzzle down anyway. And by having the shorter barrel and what I would call a hunting size suppressor, so it's a little 5-inch can overall, only 3 of it adds to the barrel length. The overall length of that barrel now is only 23 inches long. From if you were to measure it standard.
Yeah.
And so that allows me to go anywhere and do anything with it. So I had that with this on Kodiak. So I remember even heavy brush. It's a portable little brush gun.
Same gun.
Yep, same one.
Okay.
And so I use that, and then I've got a VX6 3-18 on that.
Okay.
So I practice with it out to about 1,200 yards, and then generally, unless something went sideways and I made a bad shot or something's wounded and now it's out farther, I generally won't start my shooting at much more. 500 is kind of my personal limit.
Yeah.
I can shoot farther than that in the right conditions and everything, but I like to practice to double my distance. So
What suppressor?
12.
What suppressor is it?
That one's a Thunder Beast. It's an Ultra 5.
I have this year. Ryan Lampers and I got the 338 Weatherby.
Yep.
The backcountry with the 18-inch barrel. It's short.
Yeah.
And it's a 338, 225 grains.
Yep.
Is what we use. We use it on the moose and the caribou trip we did. 3-18, same VX6 on there. That thing, I really liked it because it's also with the scope on it. It's 6.5 pounds.
Right. Yeah.
And the barrel's so short. Like, man, after running short barrels, I never want to pack something with a long barrel again. It's like for the hunts we do, I want it to be light, and I want the barrel to be compact, easy to sling,
portable, out of the way. It's not hanging on everything.
And when you carry as much camera gear as I do, a heavy rifle is a steep penalty.
It is.
It's 1, 2, 3, every 2-3 pounds more for that. Especially for large caliber rifles.
Yep.
And so it's impressive what it can do.
Well, and one of the reasons for longer barrels was to get muzzle velocity. And one of the reasons for muzzle velocity was for your point blank range.
Yep.
So you knew where to hold. And the optics take care of that. You don't need all of that speed because you can compensate for the bullet drop instantly with your CDS dial or, however you want to approach that. So for me, it's not a muzzle velocity or a high ballistic coefficient game like it was in the rifle world at one point. Now it's give me a bullet that shoots accurately and performs well on meat.
Speaking of which, that was my next question. What bullet are you running? What's your favorite bullet setup?
Yeah, so in that one, it really loves the Nosler Accubons.
Okay.
It shoots them exceptionally well. I can't hand load anything else even remotely close to it. And I've had exceptional performance on game. Now, I love the Hornady ammo, and this particular rifle likes that setup the best.
Yeah.
But in a lot of the other stuff, Hornady, their interlock bullet has done very, very well.
Nice.
For me. So this one I feed at Nosler's.
I like that Nosler Accubon. I have a 270.
Yep.
And for some reason, that rifle with that bullet just pancakes animals.
Yeah.
It's a 270 short mag. And I'm like, wow, like that just worked. Then I've used that same bullet in a different gun and it doesn't work the same. I haven't got the same results.
Okay.
Not sure what, right? And the 338 Weatherby 338, I've got the Barnes TTSX.
Okay.
225 grain. And that thing's like shooting just a slug. Like it just whop, and it stays intact.
Meaningful when it gets there.
It mushrooms and just like it looks like someone peeled it exactly perfect,
just like a banana peel.
And it's fully, the back is just intact, as if
that's what you're looking for.
It's bizarre, like, because we pulled them out of the moose, and I'm like, I thought it would be more wrecked, missing parts, or no, it just perfect.
Just did what it was supposed to do.
Yeah, it's an impressive bullet too. Different kind of bullet though, right? Different
construction. Yep.
The way it impacts the animal and how it performs different than like an AccuBond.
Yeah.
Yep. And you can see the difference when they both are killers, but in different ways.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting.
When that 338. So I hunted for years. My go-to rifle was a 375 Ackley, which is like I'm shooting antelope and mule deer and stuff with this rifle. And I got used to the effect that it had on elk. And I can tell you that the diameter and the weight of the bullet makes a remarkable difference.
Yeah.
So, I'd shoot big Roosevelt bulls with that, and they would just drop instantly, like when you shoot a mule deer with a 280 or something, just whack, and they were down. And so there's lots of variables that go into that, but it's hard for me to get suppressed on a 375 and keep it portable and all the things that we just talked about.
Yeah. Yep. That thing's a kicker too. I mean, didn't you feel that sucker hit the shoulder and everything?
Yeah.
Like what was Cole running when we were on Kodiak?
375.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought.
Yeah. And so that's, for me, when I was guiding, part of my dream was to go up and do some of what Cole does. And so I needed kind of this all around rifle that was big enough to be in bear country, but I was proficient enough. And it was flat enough for me to take it in antelope country. And so I just, at about the age of 15, picked up that 375 and just dedicated 2 years to all that I shot. And it became kind of an extension of me. But I'm also somewhat deaf after running improved loads through it. And I had that barrel cut down to 22. And there's a lot of powder coming out of that. And so the suppressor thing for me, being able to hear around the house, was a good addition.
Lamper's just got one. Brad and I are in the process of getting suppressors. Hopefully we get that comes soon. It's really nice. It's hard to go back, once you've had one, and especially when we're hunting bears a lot.
Yep.
Black bears, grizzly bears. We had some bears come in close that we didn't even know until I got home and I looked at the video. I was filming Ryan on a bear and he was getting ready to kill it, and it was getting ready to go over a hillside, and we were in dense grizzly bear country, and this beautiful black bear. And so I'm like, okay, well, he's like blowing that predator call, to keep it from going over. And so I'm like, meow, 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 meow. There's wounded rabbit, and me and him I'm blowing on it, and I'm holding a camera in this hand, that camera right there. I'm holding it like this and filming Ryan on the rifle, and I'm looking down the long lens at the bear down there, and I'm getting two angles at the same time, and I'm moving that camera around, and we both have earplugs in.
Yep.
Well, while I'm holding it like this, two giant black bears, were on a grassy slope, and we're trying to kill this black bear right here.
Yep.
Which is similar in size, but for whatever reason, these two were triggered, and they come hauling ass full speed straight at us. The first one gets there about 70 yards ahead of the other one. He's younger, bigger, giant red bear, giant. And I'm holding the camera like this, and that bear comes all the way up to sub 30 yards and is just looking at us. And he comes around and he circles behind us and disappears off the camera. I have no idea he's there. Oblivious.
You didn't know until you got home.
Until I got home.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And then we're sitting there, and this bear, Ryan decides not to shoot. He's like, at the last second, he's like, I don't know, man. I'm not going to shoot
sure
it.
About it. Yeah.
So he leans back, and because he's like, I'm not going to shoot it. And I'm like, are you sure? And he's like, nah.
Yeah.
So I pop my earplug out, and he pops his out. Right when he pops it out, and he's like, yeah, we're hit. We hear snap, snap, break. And we rip our heads to the right. And at 30 yards is the other black bear.
Of the two that ran in. So I whip the camera up, and Ryan stands up, and this bear is going, he's doing the big bear thing.
Yeah. And he knows that other bear is in front of him. but he's not as fast. He's old, teeth missing.
Yeah.
And he's black, and he is like rocking his shoulders, and he's coming in like he's coming after that red bear who got there first.
Yep.
Plus whatever else might have been. He was there to fight.
Right.
And he didn't need to get there first because
he's just going to take it. Yeah.
So he was definitely the more dominant, ripped up, scarred up. He's an ugly bear. The red one was gorgeous. He's ugly. But he's coming right at us. And around 28 yards, Ryan just, like, he got a window and he just shot it freehand.
Okay.
Scope on low power, just dropped it. And it rolled down the hill. It happened fast. And we were like, whoa. Like, we had to shoot it out of self-defense.
Yeah.
You know, the way it was coming in. I got home and I edited the film.
And you see the other one.
And I saw the other one, which we had tried to kill for 4 hours prior to that and lost it. Couldn't find it.
Oh, no.
And,
so you knew exactly which bear that was.
We knew we had been watching him for 2 days, got him tight, and he just disappeared. Well, where was he? Well, within 10 yards of where we saw him last. He must have just laid down for 6 hours and just laid down.
He just laid down, yep.
And then he stood up probably within, we just decided to give up on him and walk down the hill when we bumped into the other one. So we were a good 500 yards, 600, maybe 8 from where the bear was. But he heard that predator call and he came in. And it was eerie when I got home. And I knew he was that close. And the whole time I had no idea. And I was like, dude, if that was a grizzly bear instead, and it just came in and just wiped us out, like I was looking down a camera like this and holding one here, and Ryan was focused on his scope.
No, he's looking right
We're not
there.
looking. I mean, I looked a couple times because I blew a predator call, but then I'm back, and we both had earplugs in at the same time. You're shutting down all senses. Eyeballs.
Oh, you're focused on one thing
here,
and you can't hear anything.
And you can't hear.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is risky. At the end of the day, not being able to hear. Yep. The other part that's frustrating is when a cameraman is running a camera and there's a shooter, and you're like, "Are you on him? Are you on him? Yeah, I'm on him. Are you there?" And he
can't hear.
Where did my bullet go? You can't hear it.
Yep.
Like we can't have a conversation without going, what? Huh? And if you have your earplugs out a little bit so you can have that conversation, you're deafened when the bullet goes off.
Yeah.
And then you can't hear when you're at home.
Yeah.
You know, and so
there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah. But you know what I mean?
I do know it. So yeah. Yeah.
So the suppressor thing, it just makes sense, but it's such a pain in the butt to get one.
It's tough until if you get set up and established and you get everything into the system, then being able to just log in because they've got your information. Now it becomes a pretty quick process. There are ways to do it, and we can chat about that. But the first one's the tough one, and then after that, it's everything's in there, and you're like, oh yeah, swipe my card, I'll take that one, and they automatically send all the paperwork and. That'd be away you go.
I think we're already in the midst of that. Actually, Brad's kind of been doing I signed all the stuff, and we're on our way. But I don't know how efficient that's going to be either.
For me, there's a side benefit because I end up in a lot of cases hunting alone. I like to hunt by myself sometimes, so I love taking the kids. I love doing all that. But if there's a little window where I can sneak out and go. I may go into a nastier spot, or I may go into a place that has a really low odds of anything being in there, but I'm willing to bust my butt to go in there and just check or whatever.
Yep.
But the side benefit is with that suppressor on there, you can tell when you're by yourself where you hit on the animal by the sound.
Oh, yeah.
So you get kind of a whack when it hits bone, like shoulder.
Yeah, I can tell when I film. I film so much, but the sound... definitely is telltale.
So if you get a bump, that's a bad thing, right? Because you're back in but you can hear that because there's not the echo and the report and all that. It's all muted down enough that you get a really solid piece of feedback on where the bullet landed immediately. So I like that when I'm by myself as well.
All right. Well, Tim, we should wrap up. Tell folks we're at the Western Hunt Expo right now, but if they want to get into the Leupold,
the website's always the way to go. So leupold.com. Can go in there and check out. We've got new products section on there if you want to look at any of the stuff that we talked about, or real easy to navigate whether you're looking for rifle scopes, rangefinders, binoculars, eyewear, spotting scopes,
and anywhere else they want to go. They want to get their hands on it. Pretty much all the retailers. So nationwide, we've got more than 10,000 dealers. So you can go to any any kind of sporting goods store, chain store. So we're pretty readily accessible. On that VX6 3-18, is that kind of your favorite right now? one of them?
It is, yeah, and that's kind of a whole separate topic. But I love that one because on high power, I can shoot steel and practice at really long distances.
Yep.
I can dial in and see if that's the exact buck or the exact bear. There's a lot of identification I can do on 18 power. And then half power, which is valuable for things like holding for windage and other stuff, is at 9. And I love when I'm shooting at a game animal to be around that 8 or 9 power mark. So for me, the 3 to 18, it just checks all of those boxes. And it's basically like having 2 rifle scopes in one when you down on 3 on the bottom and 18
3 is
on the
so
top.
useful.
Yes.
I mean, to start at 4 is just a little bit rough on me, man.
It's
like
a little much.
Yeah. Especially when I'm in grizzly country and stuff. It's just, it's eerie. So, do you know, on your, before we wrap up the scope, do you run an additional level ever, or do you just kind of go with the reticle?
No, so I go with the reticle, and again, I was trying to not get too deep, but on the VX6s, they have an electronic reticle level in them, and so if I'm going to be shooting farther or it's critical, that's just the push of a button and you turn it on, and the reticle is illuminated, and if I'm level, it stays lit up the whole time.
Yep.
If I tip it one way or the other, it blinks and says, hey,
you're off.
Just check your level here.
Yep.
And so that's really helpful if you've got the time and there's some distance involved and you want to make sure that you've dialed straight up, and having that off level does matter. So I don't put an external bubble because I've already got one built in.
Because I run mine the same way. I don't have an external bubble. I thought about adding one simply because of just electronics.
Yep.
Battery going dead, or, me not having a spare, which is typical for me, not being, just what might or might not happen,
Right.
But I haven't done it because I've never needed it.
Yeah.
Yet.
In general, it's critical for archery. It's not as critical at the distances that we're talking about on big game animals. Now, if you're trying to shoot a 1-inch, target or a 2-inch target at 500 yards, it starts to matter. But the kill zone on a critter, as long as you're not intentionally trying to throw it
canted,
off, it doesn't matter as much there. And there's some purists out there cussing me right now, but that's my general statement for me personally.
Yeah.
For long range practice or really steep, awkward shooting positions, I'll turn it on.
Yeah,
because I'll feel level. We've all seen it with the bow. That feels right, and then you look and you're like, no, that's nowhere near right.
You got to draw right into the hill pretty deep. Yeah. Otherwise, you think you're level and you're not even close.
Right.
Yeah. It's an awkward feeling.
It feels off. You have to trust the gear at that point. It's like, okay, if you say so.
It's like a rangefinder. Years ago, I was using a rangefinder, and it gave me the range, and I'm like, no, that's not right. That's not right. And I shot for different and didn't trust the rangefinder. And then rangefinder was right.
Turns out it was right.
So it's one of those things you gotta trust the gear.
Yeah, invest in gear that's trustworthy and then trust the gear.
Yep. Well, man, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
It's been a while. It's good to catch up. Folks, check out Leupold Optics. We thank you for supporting the show as always. Hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, leave us a comment, subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. And stay gritty.